Mr. Lee and Mr. Saylor. And any member of the board wish to make changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll deem the agenda approved. Any member of the public wish to make comment before the agency board on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward with agency business. We have a consent agenda in front of us.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Deemer, you're on.
The Chair Marble and board members have a brief project update for you this afternoon. Starting with our financing, our SRF loans. Both loans are going very well. The SRF loan for Woodland's share of the regional facilities, we've submitted $42.8 million to date and received $37.4, and we're in a where we're submitting invoices monthly and is being processed very efficiently. The news on the Davis's loan, I think as we've talked in the past, was we were waiting for the final property to be acquired, the Lillard property. We've acquired the Lillard property. So we're in the process of amending the Davis's SRF loan documents to allow for construction reimbursement. We have a catch-up claim of $21 million that will be submitted this month, and we anticipate that that money will be received by the agency sometime late July, early August. So that's very good news that we're going to be able to catch up on Davis's loan. Joint intake grant funding, very similar story to what we discussed at our last board meeting and our last monthly reports. The federal grant needs to be amended to include an additional $2.7 million of grant funds. That covers the full cost of the grant eligible portion of the intake, and that is currently under review by the Bureau. Last time we were back in Washington, D.C., Dr. Marble and I, we were told repeatedly that that money is available, and it's just a matter of getting the paperwork processed. On the state side, reminder that we've received $12 million total, and we're seeking an additional $8.1 million to come up to the full state match for the grant funds, and there's an effort underway to identify funds in the state budget, the FY16 state budget, using Prop 1 funds for that additional $8.1 million. And we are working hard to make sure that that language is included in a trailer bill. We have been told that it has been included, but we have not seen anything in writing just yet, so we're anxiously waiting for the final language to come out. Environmental and permitting continue to work on the permit to operate, which is the key permit that we need before we can serve the surface water to customers. The draft supplemental EIR for our ASR program will be issued for public comment this month. And we've received a tentative waste discharge permit from for the treatment facility from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and that is anticipated to be considered and adopted July 31st. The list is getting shorter in terms of utility coordination and property acquisition. We're working closely with PG&E for the power to the regional water treatment facility. We need an easement from the city of Woodland, and that's in process. Property acquisition, I mentioned we obtained our last property for the project, the Lillard property, and that property is along the Davis treated water pipeline. Joint intake project, construction by Balfour Beatty is continuing. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. They're pouring a lot of concrete. They've completed the pipeline under the railroad to the point where our contractor, CH2M Hill, will pick up the raw water pipeline and construct it to the treatment plant. And they have extended work hours. They're currently working 14-hour days, Monday through Friday, and 8-hour Saturday, in order to catch up. They're a little behind on their wall pours, They have to get the wall pours done so they can install the screens on the river side of the facility, and they have to get that done by October under their permit. So they're working hard to catch up on the concrete work so they'll be out of the river in October. There's a picture of, fairly recent pictures of the joint intake. Looking to the north, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the existing intake structure in the background, some of the wall pours taking place in the center photo, and then a shot looking south. So a lot of activity at the joint intake, a lot of concrete being poured and rebar being tied. The picture of the vault where we will, in the agency's piping, temporary piping, to do the testing of our pumps at the new joint intake facility. In terms of construction at the water treatment facility, we are, again, pouring a lot of concrete at all the facilities listed here. 95% of the concrete work is now complete at the joint intake, not the joint intake, the regional water treatment facility. We're continuing blow slab work at the finished water pump station, yard piping, masonry at the operations building, and through the end of May, we're 48% complete. CH2M Hill is 48% complete on the construction, and we've received billings totaling $69.1 million. A couple of photos of the regional water treatment facility. This was taken a couple of weeks ago. You can see all of the structures coming up out of the ground. Most of the wall pours are done, and they're pouring the upper slabs at this point. This is a picture of the backwash equalization basin. In the center, upper left, is the finished clear well, and then in the foreground is the gravity thickener. I'm sorry, the gravity thickener is the round tank. The backwash equalization basin is in the foreground, the square tank. This is a picture of pouring concrete around the vertical turbine pump cans, the finished water pump station. This is a more recent photo of the operations building. You can see the masonry walls being installed. Off-site pipeline construction, a lot of activity off-site. You've been receiving weekly updates in terms of where the work is progressing and the outreach efforts. County Road 22 closure is still in effect. It's scheduled to reopen on July 15th. We've had a change in the schedule for the closure of the I-5 northbound ramp. That is now scheduled to be closed June 24th to July 7th. The good news is it'll all be done within that May 15th to July 15th window. Previously, they were going to do that I-5 off-ramp closure after July 15th, so this will minimize the time that these disruptions are in place. The Woodland finished water transmission pipelines are near completion, and we began, CH began pipeline installation on the Davis finished water transmission pipeline between County Road 25 and the treatment plant. And they began stringing pipe along County Road 103. And we continue to coordinate with the neighbors, with Yolo County, emergency personnel, the Farm Bureau, and Caltrans. A picture of the Woodland finished water pipeline crossing County Road 24. This is a picture along County Road 22, which is closed. This is the casing for the high-density polyethylene pipe that is going to go under each of the levees. So this is the casing going in on the east levee. Upcoming activities and milestones, continue to process the grant and loan applications, continue to coordinate with the Farm Bureau and the Central Valley Flood Protection Board regarding the County Road 22 closure, and coordinating with PG&E regarding the permanent power to the regional water treatment facility. Mentioned the draft supplemental EIR for our ASR program, our Aquifer Storage and Recovery Program, will be issued for public comment this month. We are paying close attention to the handling of the bioash that was deposited on the Lillard property. As you recall, there was some discussion with the Yolo County District Attorney's Office, and so we've got a very specific requirements for how to move the bioash out of the way of the pipeline installation, and then carefully replace it over the area that's disturbed. Permitting, we continue to focus on the permit to operate with the Division of Drinking Water and ongoing construction mitigation monitoring. I wanted to spend, this is something that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. It's an issue that we've been tracking for some time, but we're getting to the point now where we're going to be needing to make decisions in the next couple months. And it involves the coordination between the Regional Water Treatment Facility and the work that is being managed by RD 2035, the new joint intake facility. So our treatment facility is going to be completed earlier than the joint intake facility. The Regional Water Treatment Facility is scheduled to be complete and beginning to serve water to the Woodland Davis and UC Davis in June of next year. It's about a year from now. The joint intake facility is currently scheduled to be completed in July of next year, and contractually they're required to have it complete in October of next year. Our service contract with CH2M Hill also requires the agency to provide raw water for the Regional Water Treatment Facility startup and testing starting March 1st of next year. So that's 3 months that they are going to do all their testing. They need the raw water supply to do that. And the first addendum to the Joint Intake and Diversion Agreement, you may recall back in 2013, I believe, we amended the Joint Intake Diversion Agreement, and there are provisions in that addendum which allow us to use the existing intake and to construct temporary water facilities, pumping facilities, to provide a temporary pumping plant to feed the raw water pipeline and deliver the water to the Regional Water Treatment Facility. So we have three basic alternatives in terms of how we can proceed. We can build a temporary 30 MGD pumping facility at the existing intake site, adjacent to the existing intake. The temporary pumping plant, you would continue to use the existing intake. It would dump the water into the Conaway Canal right next to the intake, and we would have a temporary pumping facility that would pump it out of that canal and into the raw water pipeline. That would satisfy the current contract requirements. We would be able to get the water that CH2M Hill needs to begin their testing by March of next year. It would allow for the delivery of treated surface water to the cities and UC Davis in June of 2016, as currently scheduled. The cost, very preliminary cost estimate, we believe very conservative cost estimate, but the cost estimates that we've included in the budget that you're going to see in a few minutes includes $2 million for capital facilities to install temporary piping and pumping, and $2 million for the operation for a 6-month period at 30 MGD. And so a significant portion of the operating cost is for diesel fuel to run the temporary pumps. That would be offset by not having to run, obviously, the pumps at the new intake. That's one option. The second option is to delay the startup and testing until the joint intake facility is complete. Obviously, that delays deliveries of treated surface water to the cities and to UC Davis. It requires a change order to the service contract with CH2M Hill. The way the contract is set up, once they complete the testing, we release the retention, which is 10% of the contract amount, which is roughly $14 million. And they're obviously anxious to complete the testing and get the retention released. And that also triggers, once that testing is completed, triggers the operations portion of the contract, so roughly $4 million per year operating phase of the service contract. The third option is to build a temporary pumping plant at less than 30 million gallons a day. The minimum in the contract that can be run through the plant is 7 MGD. Obviously, less treated water to the cities and UC Davis next summer. And it would also require a change order to the service contract, and we'd have to figure out a way to delay the testing at the full 30 MGD to make sure that we prove out that the plant will produce 30 MGD. So those are three options. We'll be talking over the next couple of months with staffs at UC Davis and staffs at Davis, Woodland, and UC Davis, and coming up with a preferred way to proceed with this. As I said, the budget assumes worst case building the 30 MGD facility at this point. Any questions on that?
Do you have a preliminary cost on the next two options?
We don't, and that's what
Okay.
we'll be working on over the next couple of months. Actually, we're going to be refining the cost on the first option as well. As I said, I think that's very conservative. We're going to ask CH2M Hill to do a little bit of work to actually do a preliminary design and do a little bit better job of costing it out for us. And then we'll be exploring the other two options at the same time.
When do you have to make the decision?
Well, probably late fall. Yeah, we
So we got a little time.
If we decide to build a temporary pumping plant, we're going to have to authorize CH2M Hill to go order the materials and build it before March 1st.
If you're running into diesel pumps, are there any issues with the AQMD and any permitting?
I don't think so. I think that they're looking at skid-mounted or packaged units, kind of like that are already permitted for all of the current regulations.
Okay.
I had a question, a couple, Dennis, and sorry if I'm missing something. So the joint intake facility, as I understand, the contract requirement was that it would be completed by October 2016.
Right.
The regional, the treatment facility itself is going to be complete in June of 2016.
Right.
I don't know when that was supposed to be completed, but I'm trying to understand why the agency is sort of put in this position.
Well, CH2M Hill's contract requirement date is September of 2016. The Balfour Beatty, the RD 2035's contract completion date is October. So we anticipated that there might be a slight delay in terms of having the joint intake available. That's why when we did the addendum to the water diversion agreement, we put specific language in there that allows us to utilize the existing intake and draw out of their canal for this, temporary period where they're not quite done and we're ready to go.
So we've known about that there'd be some delay in a while. Okay, for a while.
We had issued the contract with CH2M Hill prior to schedule with Balfour Beatty and the contract requirements being fully laid out. So we thought it was going to be close. Turns out it is close, but we still have the potential for this period of time of up to 6 months where we're going to need to pump temporarily or delay the contract.
And it was at the time that delay was known, sort of, way back when the contracts were entered into. I assume staff at that point, because I don't think I was on the board when that happened, the staff at that point felt that delay was okay, that the benefits of having those two contracts in place, even with the potential delay there or the mismatch, whatever the right word is.
Yeah, that there
good.
would be ways, if the delay in fact occurred, that there would be options or ways to work around it, and that's kind of where we're at today.
All right, thanks, Dennis.
Okay.
Okay. So the milestones you see on this schedule, the list is getting shorter. The completion dates for the last few items are the same that you've seen before. They'll be ready to start testing. CH will be ready to start testing the plant beginning in March, as I mentioned. So that's when we need to have the raw water available. They anticipate completing the testing in June. And the contract final completion date for the joint intake is October of 2016, but as I showed you earlier, their schedule currently shows that being completed early and being available in July. This is the updated project cost that is reflected in the budget that you have later on in the agenda. This is the capital cost, and the total regional cost of $204.54 million is essentially the same number that you've seen for the past year. That has not changed. The Woodland and Davis local facilities have been adjusted to reflect the current project costs and also the amounts that are being sought from the State Water Resources Control Board for the SRF funding for those portions of the project. Other questions the board may have?
Other questions from the board on this? Very good, thank you, Dennis. Appreciate that update. We'll move to item 4, which is the budget. And any members of the board have any questions about the budget? We don't. We're going to bypass your formal presentation, which we've all been keeping up on.
Good. Well, that's good because I can't get the computer to pull it up, so that's perfect.
We have it here in front of us,
Okay.
and we'll entertain a
You
motion.
need a motion to approve?
Second.
I will motion.
With an apology that my being late may have wasted your time putting this together, but the staff report was very good. So thanks.
It was very good. Since this is the budget, let's make sure there's no members of the public that wish to make comment. Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? You have an approved budget.
Just want to thank the staffs from Woodland and Davis, and also, in particular, Lindsay Smith from West Yost. A lot of work went into preparing the tables and all the detail that's attached to it. I thought one of the interesting things that we learned when we put the budget together was last year, it was an entirely capital budget, and we had budgeted 0 for operations. And so this year, anticipating starting deliveries next year, next calendar year, a lot of time went into actually preparing an operating budget to complement the capital budget. So it's kind of satisfying to see that we're, approaching this fiscal year, we're approaching the end of the construction and moving into operations.
That's great.
Make sure you thank your treasurer also.
Actually, yes, and the treasurer. Well,
Former Davis City
if
manager.
you notice in the attachments, they're different than last year, and I think they're greatly improved. In the meeting that we had with our treasurer and with the managers from the 2 cities, really helped come up with a better product.
Yeah. Well, I found them easier than I have found in the past to follow. But, all of us here on the board look at budgets from different entities, and they're all done differently, and it's, sometimes you wish there was some standardization. But thank you very much.
Seem to be all at the same time as well.
All right, item 5, which is task order. Is that, Dennis, are you handling that?
Yeah, I just very briefly, just to say that this is related to some additional work that was required because when we did our pre-construction surveys for the off-site pipelines, we found a number of bird nests, and that triggered some provisions in our regulatory permit, and the net result is we have to have a lot more monitoring of the bird nest, and that's primarily what this change is for.
Any questions from members of the board?
I'll move the item.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this task order change. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And amendment number 1. Richard, are you doing that one for us?
Yes, sir. As you probably recall, earlier this year, the agency and the University of California approved the contract to bring UC formally into the project with a water service contract. In preparing that contract, that revised certain cost-sharing tables in the joint powers agreement to add a 3rd column for the university and to reflect the university's cost share under the various cost-sharing categories. One of those categories is somewhat of a catch-all, administrative costs, and under that category, the cities each bear 47%, the university bears 6%. After that contract was prepared and we took a harder look at it, we realized and appreciated that buried within and booked under that administrative costs item are some certain city-only tasks, notably the ASR program and some city water distribution system work. And staff felt it wasn't fair and equitable to ask the university to participate in 6% of those costs, because the university really doesn't benefit from anything under those costs. So the proposed amendment, minor amendment, would be to adjust the spread of the 47.6 as to those specified items. So those would be split 50-50 between the two cities, and the university would not participate. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge adjustment. It would, for this current fiscal years, it's about shift about 25,000 of the costs to the cities, and staff felt that was an equitable thing to do. Agency staffs coordinated with the city staffs, and the city staffs are on board with this change, so we recommend this proposed amendment.
Questions from the board?
I had one. It seems reasonable to me too as well. Does it adjust their catch-up payment as well? Does it go back and adjust it to what they've already done, or is it just future? I'm assuming that it catches it all the way through the whole contract, but.
That's a good detailed question. It's just post. From which fiscal year moving forward?
From July 1st, 2000.
Yeah, yeah. From July 1, 2013 moving forward, it would adjust the costs.
That's cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll move the
Public
item.
comment?
Oh.
None? Okay.
I'll move it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We're on to item 7,
Yes,
the
this,
raw materials cost adjustment item.
This is a risk-sharing provision that was included in the service contract. We felt it would be very difficult to accurately predict the cost of certain materials like asphalt, steel,
Right.
fuel, et cetera. So there's a one-time adjustment for those items, and all of those items, those raw material cost items, are indexed to standard industry construction indices. And so the net result of applying those indices to the raw materials identified in the service contract results in an increase in the service contract of $378,000. It's a one-time adjustment to reflect what CH2ML actually experienced in purchasing those raw material items over the course of the construction.
Any questions from the board? Public comment? I'll make a motion to approve that service contract change order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. I know I remember talking about that a few years back, quite a few years back, and that seems to me to be a very low adjustment based on some of our original conversations about it, so that's good.
It worked out fair for both sides. It was capped at $500,000. Actually, it was a little bit higher a few months ago, but when the fuel prices dropped, the cost dropped as well. But I think it was a very good way to handle materials that have a price fluctuation.
All right, and we're finally at the monetization phase here, so who's going to handle that one? Okay.
I've been asked to cover this item, Mr. Chairman. Brief background, in 2010, the agency bought water rights from Conaway Preservation Group for $79 million. That was structured as an installment payment purchase over a period of years from 2016 to 2039. And we closed on that transaction last April of 2014. Shortly thereafter, Conaway CPG, Conaway Preservation Group, sold those notes to Deutsche Bank. So Deutsche Bank is now the new note holder, and they're the folks we owe money to. And as you referenced, Dr. Marble, it was always anticipated that these notes would be monetized. The current notes, the interest, they are not tax-exempt instruments. They are just regular, plain vanilla promissory notes, so interest payments on those notes would be taxable income to the note holder. And as when we negotiated the transaction in 2010, the cities and the agency agreed to cooperate with Conaway Preservation Group or the successor to convert these notes into tax-exempt instruments, and that's where we're at now, and that's what Deutsche Bank is now requesting the agency to do. What's initially being contemplated is the agency would issue a new set of bonds, tax-exempt bonds. There would be two series. One series allocated to the city of Woodland, share of the payments, the other allocated to the city of Davis, share of the payments. And as those of you who have been involved in public financings of this nature, you know they're complicated undertakings, and one of the first undertakings on the agency side of the deal will be to assemble and contract with a competent financing team consisting of bond counsels and financial advisors and underwriters and trustees and all of those things. The costs of these, we made it real clear with Deutsche Bank that the agency, as promised, will cooperate in converting these notes, but we shouldn't spend any money on this because this is all for your benefit. So the costs of the various financing team members would be either paid, most of it would be paid for out of the financing, the proceeds of the financing, and then those costs that are not picked up out of the financing, we would have a advanced funding agreement with Deutsche Bank that we will work out. In discussing with the general manager about how to structure this, rather than bringing a series of financing team contracts to the agency board for case-by-case approval, we're asking for the board's authorization to delegate to the general manager the responsibility and authority to select the financing team members and contract with them so long as those costs are covered through the financing, as I explained. And we put together a proposed resolution to that effect that is in the agenda packet that would provide that authority to the general manager. Significantly, the resolution would not authorize staff to finally approve the bond deal. The final bond transaction, if and when those papers are put together, would come back to the agency board for its final review and approval. So this doesn't commit the agency to the bond deal. It just commits the agency to allow the general manager to take the steps necessary to proceed with it.
I might just add, as well as Dick mentioned, there'll be two separate bonds, one for Woodland, one for Davis, and then putting together the financing team and work very closely with both cities in making sure that the team we put in place meets their needs as well.
Questions?
So to follow up on that, does it go to the cities then after our approval, or after it's been completed for final approval from them, or is our board designated to be able to do that?
Your cities will be closely involved in the financing. It appears, though, that the agency will be the issuer, so the agency will be the primary one retaining the financing team. For the two cities, most of the players that you're going to work with are already in place.
Sure.
We'll be working with Best and Krieger as bond counsel. Both cities already use the same bond counsel. The two FAs we're proposing to hiring are the two FAs that are already working for both of the two cities. So on the city ends, we're going to be working with the same folks that are already under contract to the cities.
Will this burden any staff time, both here or at the cities, to a great extent?
Yes, to a degree, it certainly will.
And is that not reimbursable or accounted for in the cost of the refinancing?
It'll be reimbursable.
Okay.
It'll just be extra work that we'll have to do to facilitate.
I didn't know
this
how much
transaction.
involvement of staff was necessary, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, as we said in the staff report, it would be somewhat burdensome to the agency, but I think we'll be able to handle. And it's, as Dick mentioned, it's something that we've committed to do with CPG.
Okay, thank you.
Been nice to be an investor in a 10,000 acre foot water right 5 years ago and be trying to sell it now, wouldn't it? All right. Any other questions? Public questions? Seeing none. Anybody wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We're to the election of the board chair, our annual big event. So, Mr. Shanahan.
Yes, sir. The way the joint powers agreement is structured, it provides for an annual readjustment of the chair and the vice chair. And the agreement also provides that those positions will alternate between the two cities. So currently we've got a chair from Woodland and a vice chair from Davis. it's appropriate now for the board to appoint a new chairman who should be from the city of Davis and a new vice chair who should be from the city of Woodland. And staff obviously does not have a recommendation on the particular action.
I know where this is headed now. Brett's not even here. I'm the vice chair.
Can I make a motion that we elect Mayor Wolk to become the chairman for next year?
And I'll second it. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And we need to elect a vice chair.
You want to do it, or
Be
you want me
happy
to?
to.
I think Bill was likely or a good choice for that.
Okay, I'll move that Bill Marmo be vice chair.
I second.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, long-range calendar.
Long-range calendar, you can see item 10 in your packet. We got a lot of work done today and are not anticipating anything requiring immediate board attention in July. I would suggest that if that continues to be the case, that we consider deferring or postponing that meeting, or canceling that meeting, I should say, and I would suggest we wait maybe until we get a couple weeks out before the meeting, and we'll, if that's the case, I'll consult with the chair and we'll make that recommendation and send out the notice. We've scheduled a recess in August, and we are showing the full schedule from September through the end of the year, but again, that's pretty light, so we'll make adjustments as we get closer to those months on the calendar.
Very good. Correspondence. Any comments you care to make on the correspondence, Dennis?
It was interesting to just share with the board the letter to the agencies from Aqua, kind of in some unprecedented times when it comes to the drought and water supply, and there's some good information on the challenges that water agencies face. And then I also wanted to include in the correspondence the letter that we sent to the Budget Conference Committee from a lot of supporters of the project. Very timely response to that request, and we're hopeful that that's going to help us get that $8.1 million in the state budget.
Very good. Any questions? Technical Advisory Committee.
Sure, I'll start. Our East Trunkline pipeline is currently live and functioning. We're running water through it. Our West Pipeline, on June 18th, the pipe will arrive and the site is currently being prepped and getting ready to receive the pipe. Our 2 new ASR wells, the bids are back for the sonic coring, and the award will be, the bid opening is on June 25th and the award is on July 7th. That will give us 3 ASR wells that we will have in before the finish of the treatment plant. So when that treatment plant comes online, we're ready to rock and roll with our ASR. We are currently planning our backflushing and ice pigging, evaluating and mitigating water quality, and getting the distribution system ready for startup. As we look at the some of our water lines are going to be flowing backwards because of the new flow from the plant, and trying to identify which ones those are and plan for cleaning those out prior to that water coming on. And we are continuing our annual 2-inch iron pipe replacement back of walk to try and get as much of that out of here before the new water and water pressure comes online. That's all we have.
And just to give you a little update on the local Davis project, our council awarded the local pipeline project at the last meeting on June 2nd. We are finalizing our local SRF loan, and we expect to have that approved and ready to allow us to issue our notice to proceed following the 4th of July weekend. So we're just about ready to launch on our local improvements. We're all lined up for it.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Any board?
Just one of the things that our contract with the agency requires is a catch-up payment for the time between when we last reconciled our participation and when we signed the contract. And so I've been working with Dennis and Lindsay to get that together. I just want to, the contract says we are supposed to pay within 90 days of signing the contract, which would be June 22nd, and we're working with them to get an invoice. We can't pay until we get an invoice, so we've agreed that we would make payment within 30 days of receipt of the invoice. So as soon as that comes through, we'll take care of that. So we'll be there. I was trying to figure out how I send an invoice that says it's about $350,000, so please write a check. But we'll get there.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments?
Just wanted to apologize again for being late. I'm really sorry I got caught up
We're
at
good.
Solano.
We're making it.
And then second, and I don't want to take too much time, but Richard, I am getting some questions in light of the curtailment order by the by the State Water Resources Control Board.
Yep.
Certainly the post-1914. I mean, I'm just wondering if you can, I know that if you can explain that this project or our water right is not part of this, of any curtailment order at this point.
Correct.
But could you also talk about perhaps future efforts should this drought worsen or continue to be bad?
Okay. Briefly, for this year, and in most drought years, the agency would not be able to divert under its own water right permit, its initial permit. Therefore, the water right purchase from Conway Ranch becomes significant, the one we just talked about in the context of the Deutsche Bank financing. Those are two water right licenses with priority dates of 1919 and 1947 or thereabouts, diversion rights that are fairly, historic and senior, but not entirely. And this is a good good example year because last week the State Water Resources Control Board curtailed water rights going back to 1903. So if the agency had to rely solely on the CPG water right licenses and its own permit, and that was it, then there'd be no water available to divert during this drought condition or in years moving forward. Significantly, though, as part of the CPG deal, we also acquired an assignment of a settlement contract with the Bureau of Reclamation, and that contract entitles the agency to divert 7,500 acre-feet per year. That's been reduced because it's a critical dry year. Ordinarily, it would be 10,000 acre-feet per year, but in a critical dry year, and this is a critical dry year, it's been reduced to 7,500 acre-feet. But significantly, even in the face of the curtailment by the State Water Board, your 7,500 acre-feet contract entitlement from the Bureau has been untouched because that relies on Bureau water rights and water coming out of Shasta Lake. The last part of your question, sort of looking forward, what if it doesn't rain this winter, what happens next year? It's very hard to speculate. We still have a contract entitlement from the Bureau of 7,500 acre-feet out of Shasta, but if things continue to worsen and there's no water in Shasta, it's hard to say. So it's hard to speculate, but what's really important for the cities moving forward, and Woodland's explanation about the ASR program is a good example, is you will always continue to be conjunctive use cities, and it's important not to forget about that and to continue to take care of the groundwater basin because it's times like this that you'll have the groundwater to fall back on. But that 7,500 entitlement from the Bureau settlement contract is incredibly valuable in years like this. And just to give you an idea on value, if that's at a current market price of about $650 per acre foot, just for this year alone, that 7,500 acre feet would be worth about $4.9 million. And your entire water right purchase in perpetuity is $79 million. And that kind of just gives you an idea on value. It's always hard to peg water rights and value and was $79 million a good price or not a good price, and it'll be a generation from now to really answer that question. But at least for this year, that 7,500 acre foot is incredibly valuable.
Thanks, Richard. I'm getting questions on that, so
I
appreciate
suspect you are.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add about taking care of the groundwater. This university's been drawn from the deep aquifer now for 60 years, I guess, and the city has increasingly gone there. This is the first time we've had to lower any of the intakes in our deep aquifer wells. And looking at the some of the well level data, we now see that for the last 6, 7, 8 years, the water level in the deep aquifer has been declining. So taking care of the deep aquifer is going to be very important. And as part of that, Bob Clark is working with Dave Phillips in our office, who's our utility manager, and we're already working to get together to have a kind of a review of the data, think about what options are, and start talking that process through.
Yeah, and this is repetitive for maybe a couple of you from yesterday, but at the WRA meeting yesterday, we gave an update on the formation of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency here in Yolo County. We've been working really hard to get some funding that is a little difficult to elucidate with DWR, though we're told it's there. And we're actually submitting right now a funding request that would cover facilitation services for a period of, I think, 32 months, something like that. And we're hopeful to get funding thereby to assist in facilitating this formation and in at least the initial development of the groundwater sustainability plan, which is really what it's all about. We spend a lot of time on what the agency should be, but it's the plan that matters. So that's in process still and hasn't been forgotten. We've just decided that rather than launching out on our own, if there's some funding, we're going to try to get it, and there is funding. We've just got to access it appropriately. Very good. If there's no objection, we'll adjourn the meeting and thank everyone for being here. And look forward to the chair covering a good meeting next time.
Yeah. Big shoes to fill.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thanks,
Yeah.